Hey there, you guys, and welcome to Real Estate Divas. I'm Jer'Leigh Thompson with Texcel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation, and I'm here with Kristin Gerst. We're
back.
We're breaking in a new studio. We'll be back and forth between a couple of different studios, but we are super excited about our guest today. Vivian Yip is visiting us from Austin. So, Vivian, we are super excited to talk to you today about midterm rentals.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited my first in-studio podcast recording.
Get the heck out! Awesome.
And I get to break this place in. It's so cute.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Well, we're happy that you're here, and I can't wait to hear about your whole story. I mean, we all kind of have a story that we've told. Kristin and I, our audience that kind of knows what we do, how long we've been doing it and everything. But give us a little insight on how long have you been in real estate?
I have been in real estate since 2004.
Okay.
Which I was 24 at the time. I bought my first house. That was a time when we didn't have social media and all that stuff. My mom was just like, let's get you, in a house and let's get you a house. And the reason why she wanted this particular house so bad was because there was a basement apartment that had a separate entry, and I had a mortgage payment, I think, of like $920 at the time, and the basement was paying $650. So I was house hacking before house hacking was even a word.
Right?
It's awesome.
But then I became an accidental landlord when my job transferred me to Chicago. So I kept renting that house upstairs and downstairs, moved to Chicago, and had a great time there. I met my husband there, and again, we didn't have the resources that we do today about investing, especially as a 20-something-year-old. I was like, investing's kind of boring. Let's just go party. Yeah, I had a lot of fun partying.
Chicago's a good place to do it.
But you had your house in Texas that's paying for itself.
Now I do, yes.
Yeah.
But I still had that place in Toronto. But
this is Toronto.
This is in Toronto.
That's right. You're from Canada.
Don't hate me for that. But I became an accidental landlord, and I sold that place about 5 years later. And I made my first $100,000 by the time I was 27.
That's awesome.
On real estate. So
all you
were
young
hooked.
people out there, did you hear that? Before she's 30, $100,000.
Yeah.
Not from her job.
Profit.
Yeah.
Then I reinvested that into a condo. Bought that condo in April of 2007 at the height of the Chicago market.
Awesome.
In a gentrifying area. And then the recession hit.
Mortgage meltdown.
The mortgage meltdown hit, and I lost $120,000 in equity overnight. And I was like, okay, I'll just keep it. And I kept losing money on it. I finally sold it 9 years later. I was telling you this last night. Lost $55,000 on it, and that was after losing $600 a month on it in cash flow negative, because condos are my worst strategy. I hate them. And after that, I learned that location really does make a difference. Because in the highs, location's great, but in the lows, if you don't have a good location, it's super hard to offload.
Right.
Absolutely.
And seriously, this is something I love about you, is that you just tell it like it is. Yeah, I profited, and it was a home run when I was young.
Yeah.
And then my second one, it was terrible, and
But
I lost a bunch
that's
of money.
real
But
estate.
it is
It is.
And any real estate investor out there who goes, "Oh, I've never lost money on a deal," is
not
lying.
if, it's when.
Yeah.
They're just lying.
Yeah. As long as you win more than you lose.
Right.
That's the most important thing.
Well, and that comes from experience and education.
And networking and
Absolutely.
And a little bit of luck to not buy at the top of the market.
True.
In Chicago in
True.
a re-gentrifying area.
But long story short, I put real estate investing aside for a while, focused on having really good times. Had children, got married, moved to the suburbs, moved to Austin with my job at Apple, and I was grinding. I'd finished my master's degree, I was working at Apple, I was in operations, so launching iPhone 10, 11, 12, just grinding, and every day I'd come home at 6:30, cook dinner, put my kids to bed, clean the house. Then the next day was the same thing all over again. And I just thought, you know what, being in my 20s and having so much fun, I miss that. How do I get back there? So I talked to my husband, who's super handy. I was like, how about we do something different? Let's plan a new future for us. Let's say 5 years from now, where do we want to be? And, how are we going to do that? So in my mind, they always say, Simon Sinek says, it starts with why. Mm-hmm. So my why was really simple. I said, I never want to ask for another day off. because I felt guilty for even leaving to go read a story for my kids' kindergarten class. Or I felt guilty when they were, sick from home and I needed to care for them. Like, I didn't like those feelings. I wanted to own my own time. So I said, let's start flipping houses. I mean, everybody's doing it on HGTV.
It's HGTV is literally my nightmare.
Yeah.
As a realtor and a broker and everything like that.
And as an investor and a flipper and a rehabber, I would sit there Sunday mornings, we're watching HGTV with my coffee, and I'm like, oh wait, pause, rewind slowly. I'm
That's
like,
not how it works.
look at that. I'm like, that's not even finished there. I'm like, they put a plant in front of that to kind of shadow it.
But it does inspire people to take action, which is great.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
I just had to keep that at the forefront of my mind. Like, why am I doing this? Because you're going to have hard times as you're pivoting into something that you want for yourself. So, case in point, like, I studied the hell out of real estate for a good 4 months, bought our first property, flipped it. Not totally proud of the end result, but it was our first project, right? Yeah. We made $9,000 on it between the two of us over 5 months. Not a lot of money, but
hey, that's a good first one.
Totally.
If you profit on your first one, especially when you're learning all the ins and outs.
Totally.
It's a win.
If you think about it, $9,000 between two people, save $4,500 a person, way cheaper than a college education.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I see that as, hands-on learning. We got to experience what it's like to tear out bathrooms, go through the process of, changing floors, scraping popcorn ceilings, getting countertops measured. Like, those are things you have to actively learn to do. The hardest part is like the finishing, all the detail work at the very end. Any flipper will know that.
That one, whenever you're going through blue taping the whole place and then coming back to do it, it's overwhelming because
you need a million skill sets to do that. But, that $9,000 profit helped us get a $600,000 profit on our 21st flip.
Nice.
Right? You have to start with that first step.
You have to start.
You have to start with that first step.
So now, like, here you are, that's where you started. What is it, what's kind of your forte at this point?
I think my forte always has been collaborating and connecting people. Mm-hmm. I think anybody that has known me for my entire life will always say that's probably my key feature, is that I'm like my dinner parties. I have my Brazilian friends, I have my Israeli friends, I have my Mexican friends, and we all kind of hang out in different groups together, but come the seasons, I bring them all together and everybody gets to meet and we all have the same great energy, and that's the kind of people I bring. I bring good people because I think that good people also know good people.
Absolutely.
So you've started flipping houses and then you decided, hey, we need to keep them.
Right, because when you flip houses, you get taxed on it.
Yes.
And I was like, well, how do we not get taxed on it? And then I read a book called Tax-Free Wealth. Have you guys read this?
No.
So Robert Kiyosaki, everybody knows Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Sure,
Rich Dad,
absolutely.
Poor Dad. Well, his accountant, Tom Wheelwright, wrote a book called Tax-Free Wealth. And I read that about 4 years ago. And I started really understanding the magic of depreciation, in his words. And I thought, we need to start keeping these properties because there's so many tax benefits to doing that. So, as a reminder for anybody that's going to read this book, read it every year at the beginning of the year and read it like in the second half of every year so that you're planning your tax strategy. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep.
Yes.
And having that good tax person in your corner, a good CPA, a good accountant, that's really important as well. You want somebody who is well-versed in real estate.
Yes. But going back to, keeping the properties, like Austin is an expensive place.
Yeah.
2020, 2021, 2022, the prices went berserk. And even though we bought these properties distressed, we still needed to find a way to cash flow on them. And I turned them into midterm rentals, kind of on accident. And then I discovered
Were they short-term rentals beforehand?
So our sixth flip became a short-term rental. And I started that in July of 2019. Got like 50-something reviews, and then the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh gosh, Airbnb's canceling everybody's reservations. Yes. Didn't matter if I had a strict cancellation policy. They were canceling reservations.
So
do you remember that?
I do, and I didn't. we've been hanging out and done 3 panels over the last week together in Houston, Austin, and Dallas now.
Yeah.
And she's brought this up on, how she got into this. And when the pandemic hit, I saw the writing on the wall that we weren't going to be able to host all these people. I had people flying in from California, and I had a fully booked thing. So I forced people to cancel. And I completely cleared the calendar. And that way, once they then booked starting in April of 2020, those were non-refundable.
Yeah.
And it was your cancellation policy. And so you wouldn't be charged if people didn't show up for COVID.
Yeah.
So that was my answer to it. I still kept them as short-term rentals.
But you had multiple at the same time,
I
right?
did.
So you had more risk than I did.
No, at that time I had 9. Wow. 9.
Yeah.
I had 4 that I was managing for somebody else and 5 of my own.
Yeah.
And I was freaked out when I realized, I'm like, we're shut down. The airlines aren't flying.
People at the borders preventing people from crossing state lines.
Yes.
Yes.
You know how crazy that was?
Yeah. I know. And I'm
crazy.
like, oh my God, how am I? I'm like, I'm going to go under.
Well, and none of the mortgage companies were saying a peep about how they were going to handle this, because now it's devastating. 80% of America isn't able to make a living, so how
do
are
we
we
do
going
this?
to,
So
so it was a slightly different thing. But
it was still a strategy.
It was.
Right? You can't just let the universe give you what it's going to do if you know that it's forced. The universe is doing something to force you to pivot. And
I did
how I see it.
do some midterm rentals. I advertised on Facebook, and I sent it out to the high rises where all the lawyers and doctors live.
Yeah.
And I had lawyers and doctors just book these houses with pools.
Yeah.
And
just
stay
to
there
get out of just to get
just
out
to
of
get
the
out
condos.
of the high just to get out
we
of
knew
there.
we were going to be hibernating for a while.
Yep.
And so they didn't want to be up there.
Super
and that was
smart.
sad.
But your pivot was you had it and you decided.
Well, I was then like, okay, if I take it off of Airbnb, which I wanted to do because I didn't want them to control my revenue, I was like, do I rent by the room to travel nurses? Because a friend of mine in San Diego was like, oh, just rent to travel nurses. But then I realized like I needed, over $3,000 to turn a little bit of a profit and cover my expenses. Especially like in Texas, your utilities get really high in the summertime. So I wanted to break even at that point. And I thought like somewhere between $2,800 and $3,000 would be my break even point. So I like looked into renting by the room. I'm like, but that's 3 times the work. You got to find 3 renters, sign 3 leases, do 3 background checks, collect 3 rents from people. And I was like, that's too much work. Then my friend in San Diego, he's like, try Furnish Finder for midterm stays for the whole house. Try putting it on the MLS. My husband's a realtor. So I did both. And within like 2 weeks or so, a family from California was building a house nearby. So they booked it at $3,800 a month for 3 months. And I was like,
all right,
this
works.
Nice. And then of course, 2 weeks before they leave, I'm like, I don't have a booking again for the rest of the year or whatnot. And then I got a call from a realtor who found my property on the MLS, and he put in a construction team. They paid, I think, $3,200 for 7 months.
Wow.
So I was still cash flowing. I was beyond my break-even point. And I was like, I think I'm onto something. Like midterm rentals are a thing because everybody on Airbnb, their calendars are booked on the weekends, open during the weekdays. So hard for someone to book an extended stay. So I was like, you know what? Let's go all in. But at that time, I started losing my hair. I started losing my hair very, very rapidly.
After COVID, after quarantine.
Well, it was the summer of 2020.
Okay, so right during.
Right then.
Yeah.
I was losing my hair really, really rapidly, and I was super stressed out of my job. And I thought, I think I need to sell this house because I bought it for so cheap. I bought it for $185,001.
Oh my gosh, in Austin,
in Round Rock.
Oh,
which
good
is just
Lord.
just over the Austin border.
Nice.
I put about $55,000 to $60,000 in it, and I found a California investor that was willing to pay $348,000 for it.
Awesome.
So I sold it, and I was like, this will give me enough money to quit my job, and I'll figure out the next step. So I sold it, and then all of a sudden, like the law of attraction started bringing me all these deals. I mean, I had to find them too, but then I turned that 1 door into 2 doors by buying a duplex, And then I was able to just find more properties because I made such a profit. I was able to reinvest that money into more doors as they came along. And now I have 6 midterm rentals.
Which
That
is great.
Fantastic. That is so exciting.
Yeah.
So talking about your midterm rentals, and you've got your own platform, which takes time to grow, and you've got to market it, and it's got to get out there. And I know you're networking with insurance companies as often as you possibly can just to kind of do the handshake deal and get people to your site. But something that intrigued me in just our past conversations is when you were talking about if somebody wants to do midterm rentals and say they're only on Airbnb.
Yeah.
If you're out there doing short-term rentals or midterms, you need to be on more than just Airbnb.
Yeah.
Don't ever rely on one. But how do you always say you've got to really guard your calendar.
Yeah.
And I remember you were saying you would look ahead and you would say, okay, well, this is going to be 60-day minimums.
Yep.
How far ahead do you look at doing something like that?
So I have it set up. I have a YouTube training on this to how to use price labs to really control your calendar. Number 1, on Airbnb, open your calendar for 365 days. That way, if someone is, if someone's house burns down, they can go in there and they can see that your property is available. And if you have your profile set up correctly, they should be able to find you offline for a direct booking, especially for that long of a stay.
Nice.
Number 2 is, if you can straddle the short-term rental and midterm rental model, then do one-night minimum bookings for the next 14 days. Chances are no one's going to book one night because it's expensive for cleaning.
Right.
But what that does is it shoots your listing algorithm to the top so people see it all the time because Airbnb is going to reward you for taking one-night stays. Then after 14 days, the next 7 to 21 days, I do a minimum of 7-night stays. And then after that, about, I think, day 30, I have it set at 30-day minimum. And then after 45 days, I have it set at 60-night minimum. Because I have people all the time, they're like, well, I have a request for a 3-month stay, but I have bookings in January. So today's November 15th.
Yeah.
I don't want a booking in January because that screws my calendar. And now I got to go and cancel the booking. I might have to pay a penalty. I might lose my superhost status. So if you control your calendar and discourage bookings in the future, it's a really good strategy.
And so you're just kind of weaning out of the short-term rental into the midterm.
Correct. I'm just trying to slot in all
So
the short
45
stays.
days ahead, that's all 60 days.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what if, do you have it set, because there are, especially on Airbnb, I'm not sure about VRBO, but Airbnb, because that they can contact you for a different length of stay if they need to.
I don't remember that button, but maybe there is.
Maybe, but you're saying that in your profile you have it set up that.
Oh yeah, my profile specifically says I'm the founder of Corporate Rentals USA, and our brand of Hestia Homes. Blah 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 blah. If they could put 2 and 2 together, they could just put.
They can just Google
Vivian
that. Yeah.
Corporate Rentals USA Hestia, and they'll find me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
that's why branding is important.
Absolutely.
I've even found hosts that put their full name on their profile. And I've reached out to them directly, found them on LinkedIn, maybe found their Facebook page or their Instagram. I mean, it's social media, right?
It's easy. It really is
So-
at our fingertips.
So and you have a rental lease.
Yes.
What do you feel that for midterm rentals specifically?
Yeah.
What do you feel are the important parts to have in that rental lease agreement?
This is a good one. Now, I've not had to exercise any of this in the court of law, so I'm just sharing my experience. But in my rental lease agreement, I don't ever use the word tenant. I use the word guest and owner. So there's no tenant, no landlord. It's guest and owner. I say
and
that
why?
because if someone were to squat, what's the first thing you're going to do?
You're going to most likely call the police.
Correct.
But, yeah.
So if you show the police, like, this is a guest, this is not a landlord-tenant agreement, hopefully the police sides on your is on your side.
Because it's a hotel guest.
Yeah,
so they
it's
will
an
ask-
innkeeper rights.
Innkeeper
Exactly.
rights, and they will escort them from the property.
Correct. As opposed to considering it as a civil matter. So that's number 1. Number 2,
That is seriously.
Yeah, I think that's gold.
That is gold. Like, people need to realize that. Just because, I mean, we all probably have seen the most recent news or something, you know, I mean, it was all over social media, the guests that stayed in
700
California.
days, 700 nights in
and
California.
squatted
That's insane.
in an Airbnb. I'm like, what is going on here?
But God bless California.
So, but like, I'm hoping that the police will deal with it as a innkeeper right matter as opposed to a civil matter. So that's like my first line of defense. The second one is, this tip came in from a friend of mine, Robert. He said, in your rental agreement, have the guests state their primary address so that they are stating that they have a primary address, and that they acknowledge that this is a transient property only for a temporary stay. And I think the third one was that, oh gosh, what was
it? The mailbox key?
The mail, like I don't allow them to deliver mail. I tell them to get a P.O. box.
Love that. Because I let mine, and then my mailbox keys go missing.
Oh yeah, that's
And then
like
I have to pay to get them
rekeyed,
rekeyed, which is a nightmare.
Dealing with USPS is like so insane.
Yep. No, that's a brilliant tip.
Yeah.
The
Trying to
P.O.
think what
box.
else.
Now, did you have an attorney write up your lease agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
I had an eviction attorney write up my lease agreement.
Nice.
Because you got to work backwards from the law.
Yes.
They've already seen how it happens at the very end.
Yes.
So let's have them work backwards to, you know, put in the right language and everything.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting. I mean, those you just gave a ton of tips right there, as far as like if you're going to go ahead and start pivoting into midterm rentals, or you want to start up a midterm rental. I mean, those tips are invaluable.
When you have them write down their primary address and that their intended stay is as a transient property, if something were to happen, you can actually go after them for fraud because they've stated their purpose and now they're going against their word.
Yeah.
Or the contract.
Finally, my last question goes to...
Is it your last question?
It's my last question. It's my last question. When you're looking at, you know, the properties that you have, and let's say that there's a short-term rental host out there, and they can only get their weekends booked.
Yeah.
And that house should be able to make more money as a midterm rental.
Absolutely. Because you get way higher occupancy and you're filling your calendar with paid rent Monday through Sunday. So, you know, there's two ways to do midterm rentals. There's what I call the race to the bottom, which is being only on Airbnb and only on Vrbo. There, you're competing on price. Or you can do the B2B model, which is, you know, something that I'm continuously building every single day, and they pay for value. And I make 20 to 30% more on our properties under the Hestia family when we do the B2B value.
Yes.
Nice.
And
So-
I find, especially with my midterms, that it is dependent a lot on, my gosh, bedrooms and just amenities and what's available.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would say, hey, look at your property, zoom out a little bit and see how many are, you know, if you're competing with 40, find out which ones have game tables, find out which ones have hot tubs, find out which ones have pools. I'm not saying add a pool because that would be nuts.
I got one.
Yeah.
How many have EV chargers?
You're kidding. Is that a big thing?
Well, I just got my first EV car.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about a midterm rental guest, do they want to drive out of their way every single day to go charge their car? Or would they rather wake up with a full tank of gas?
So that is one, and there's probably one in 100, one in 1,000 that have.
Well, like she was mentioning earlier, I mean, her hotel, to find a hotel that offers it, pretty slim.
I had to drive 12 minutes to go in to the charger, and then I had to wait like an hour to get my car charged up. Or I could choose to stay at an Airbnb that already has a charger, and I could just wake up and just go every day without having to plan an extra hour and 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
I think
That's a huge, and that's, yeah.
I literally made this decision last week. So all my properties, I'm going to put in a 50 amp.
Yeah, yeah.
And most
that's
people that
awesome.
have an EV car, they have an adapter that they can just plug in and they can charge their car. I mean, it's not going to be a super powerful charger, but it'll at least
But
get them
if they're
going.
there, they can do it overnight. Okay, so they
Yeah.
spend 8
absolutely.
hours. Does it need to be?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let everybody know, because we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But let everybody know how to get a hold of you. I know you said that you have courses, you have, kind of a mentoring program.
I do. I don't have a course yet.
Oh, okay. I'm
but
sorry.
I would like to come out with one to teach people the operational side. That's like, operating multiple properties is a lot of work, but there's so many things I want to go through. So you can join me on my Facebook group, Midterm Rental Wealth. You can find me on TikTok, on YouTube, and Instagram, Corporate Rentals USA,
I love it.
or Vivian Yip Official.
I love it. You'll definitely need to follow and get as much information from this brilliant woman as possible, because she's doing it right. So that being said, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing all that. It's been awesome. It's been really enlightening, and I think it's going to be super helpful to everybody else. Kristin, you want to sign off?
I'm Kristin Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage Investments, and I'm always looking for those owner finance mortgage notes to buy. Send them to me.
And I'm Jer'Leigh Thompson with Texcel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation. If you're looking for a place to hang your license, or if you've got a property in Arlington that you're looking to get rid of, go ahead and hit me up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vivian.